All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 10 after 10 Tuesday tips
Yeah,
this
there we go.
week. Just keeping lots of 10s in the theme today, I guess.
Absolutely.
All right, so we will just go over today how you are going to handle the family first wages on the quarterly payroll reports. The example I'm going to show you guys today is just a quarter two. It's a form we already had filled out and we've done trainings with. So didn't have any specific information like EINs on there. So I'm using that one. The form is slightly different for quarter 3 and 4. Just there's a line that they took out where it says if you have quarter 1 information. I mean, they took that out because you shouldn't need that after quarter 2. But really the process is going to be the same for everybody doing this. So if you're not familiar with who needs to do family first wages, who you need to pay for that, how you do that, back up and watch last week's video and get familiar with that. So this is how you're going to report them. So you guys will see a 941 on the screen for quarter 2. In here, QuickBooks and most softwares are going to fill in all of the information for you, except for what is in this red rectangle here. The software isn't set up where it's going to be smart enough to know what was the 2 weeks paid sick leave, what's the family first leave wages, even if you set it up in their books exactly how they recommend. These lines are still not going to fill in. So it's going to be very important while you're in your software that you type into these lines here in column 1 so it carries through. Otherwise, these are going to be blank. This number down here is going to be wrong and you're going to look like you paid in more tax than you should have when really you paid in the right amount. Your form just needs updated. It's a really common error we're seeing. If you find that this wasn't put in your software and carried through down into here, that can be amended. You do a form 941X for that specific quarter and it can be updated and fixed. If you need help, definitely reach out to your accountant on the amendment. But in going through, you split your wages. Now in the past, it did not have this extra 2 lines here for the 5A, but there was always the 5A and the 5B where you could split your tips out. You'll notice that the percentages are different on the family first. This is only half of it down here. And because of that difference, it may lead to having overpaid your taxes, and that'll show on the following page. But the big thing, put in your column 1, it's going to use the percentages to calculate your tax owed on that. A good double check you're going to want to do is to just line up these 3 amounts, add them together, and you're going to see when you do that, those 3 amounts should tie to the wages paid up here. If not, you need to investigate what's going on and why. There are a couple benefits that may lead to that difference, but for the most case, these 2 numbers should tie. So if they don't, you need to reach out or look at your numbers again and make sure they're right. So the rest of the form, slightly different, but really the same. You're going to go through and go down. Here's the taxes it says you owe. If you have any adjustments for fractions of cents, this would be any adjustments of less than $1 from rounding when you go to make your payments, just so the tax and payments and all tie. That's going to show in here. And you get down, there's your taxes due. We get to line 11 in new line. So in here, it talks about this non-refundable portion from Worksheet 1. So Worksheet 1 has never existed before year 2020, but this year they completed this to go through. Now, step 1 is going to be if you had any deferral Social Security tax on the employer side of it. This was something that was only eligible if you did not get a PPP loan. So that would be this part up here, the employer share. Most businesses got the PPP loan and this section isn't going to be applicable to them. So you're going to jump down here to the family first portion. And in here, it's going to ask about the qualified sick leave and it tells you exactly where to get that from. The first part is the 2 weeks. It's going to walk you through calculating that Medicare portion. You'll add them together. You'll get your credit here. It's going to do the same if you had any family leave. Now, if you only had the sick leave, then these lines here would just be blank and that'd be fine. Just carry it down through. It's going to give you that total credit and then it's going to split it between what's non-refundable and what's refundable. Not really a big deal there. Either way, the form is going to work out as long as you have it in the lines. But when you get down to this, it's going to tell you to take this part back over to the 941, line 11B. So our 1191 is just going to come in here. That's the credit we're going to get for the wages that we've paid. And so if we had already requested that back on a Form 7200, that would be probably the amount we'd requested. If we had reduced our EFTPS.gov payments, so we had that credit immediately instead of waiting, that should tie to that amount or close to it. It may not have that small Medicare portion in it, is likely the difference. Most people subtracted just the gross wages and didn't add in that extra. But you'll see that amount and it flows through to the next page. And we get down here to the actual total taxes that should have been paid in to the government. So the big thing with line 12, and this is always the case, regardless of your deposit schedule, but your line 12 is your tax due, and that needs to tie to your part 2. If you're a monthly depositor, you'll see this amount. It must tie to the penny to this, or the IRS can reject it. Additionally, if you're not a monthly depositor and you're a semi-weekly depositor, I don't have the third page on here, but that Schedule B that you would fill out at the bottom of that number would need to tie to this line 12. So that's kind of your second check that things are flowing through correct, right? If not, it's likely that your Family First was not set up how your software wanted it to, and these numbers may need to be manually recalculated. In that case, unless you're really familiar with calculating them, we do recommend you reach out to your accountant because it can get a little tricky, especially if you have a lot of benefits going on in there. But that's kind of your second check that everything is flowing through. The last step then is just going to be going through with the payments that were made. Now, in this case, they had paid this amount, and that included the overpayment of their social or their Medicare taxes from this form. So they've overpaid what they really owed after that credit. So it's going to flow down here and it's going to have a little bit of a refund back for them. If everything had been reduced already, this likely is 0 for many. If you've reduced too much in your credits, you may have a balance due, or if you didn't make a payment because you weren't sure what you were doing. The big thing you're going to want to pay attention to in here is going to be this total advances from Form 72. The key word in this line is advances you've actually received from the IRS. So if you send in a Form 7200, let's say you did it yesterday and you send it in. When you in January are filling out this form, we recommend then waiting later in the month just to try and see if you have that money back yet. But if at the time you are filing this form, you haven't actually received the money back, you don't fill it in here. The IRS may be looking at the dates and say, ooh, it's second half of December. We're going to wait, get your refund on your form. They may still send it. They're not really giving us clear guidance. What they are telling us is that if you haven't received it, do not put that money here. And they then, when they process your form, will see if that's actually accurate and look in that number. But you really do want to make sure you have the money, because otherwise you're telling them you don't want a refund, and they might be not sending this because it's so close to quarter end, and you have money sitting out there as a credit that you just haven't gotten, and you don't want to have to fight and wait for that. So that's kind of the big steps on the 941. It's still going to get sent the same way you've always had it. You'll come down, you're going to come in here and sign. Part 3 is informational. If it doesn't apply, you leave it blank. But if you have health plan expenses that you still paid healthcare while they were out on sick leave, that employee retention credit, not many businesses got that in the beginning. So most businesses are not filling out this back part. And then you'll see this line 24 where it talks about this March. Again, that's only quarter 2. Your form will say that there's a reserved line for future use type of situation. But you'll come down, if somebody else is helping like us, this third-party designee should be filled in. Part 5, the signing like you're always doing, keep that the same. You're going to send it to the same place. There is 2 different addresses, whether you're sending it with the payment or without a payment. So make sure that you're sending it to the right address. That's in the 941 instructions because it's different for every state. It depends on where you live as to what address you send it to. But that's kind of the big. The last step you're going to do, because this is fourth quarter, is that the IRS uses these 941s from every quarter, or 943 or 944 if you only do an annual form instead of the every quarter. They do use these and tie out to the W-2s. So you want to make sure it's accurate here. But additionally, this year on the W-2s, the IRS did put out, you do now have to report these family first wages on employees' W-2s in box 14 of that W-2. So make sure that these are in there because they will be tying those out as well. So I think that's all of the tips on the 941. If you guys have questions, we're always willing and here to help you. So reach out and let us know how we can assist.